They say fail fast. Everybody's going to fail. What is the thing that you fear the most? If you can articulate that or even visualize that in your own mind, then it doesn't become as scary. It's something that you can deal with. You almost have to stare fear in the eye. I am Alice Keene Houston, and I usually introduce myself as being the wife of Wade Houston, the mother of Alan, Lynn, and Natalie, and Mima to 16 grandchildren. Those are my most important roles. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and my parents both were educators. My mother was a special education teacher. My father, William Lee Keene, was a coach of basketball and football. He lettered in 4 sports at Howard University at 5'7". I grew up in, of course, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, during the time that Louisville was segregated. I lived on Grand Avenue, which was a really long block, 2 doors from Muhammad Ali. Muhammad lived at 3302 Grand Avenue, and I lived at 3306. And in our block, there were all types of people. We had Joe Ray, who was the first African-American race car driver from Kentucky. We had Georgia Powers, who was the first African-American woman legislator in Kentucky. It was a block in which you could feel the love and the community of your neighborhood. You didn't really realize that your world was primarily made up of people who looked just like you. Our parents protected us from the reality that it was exclusionary and it was segregated. Our family was just steeped in faith and education. We were surrounded by people who had aspirations. Failure was not an option. It was, you can get through anything. Just look at what you have already gotten through and accomplished. So I think the combination of growing up in an environment that was filled with faith and where education was just fundamental to my whole environment and development. My greatest success was probably marrying Wade Houston. Wade was actually the first African American who signed a letter of intent to play basketball at the University of Louisville. I was in college, and my roommate had liked him, and she said, "I wonder what Wade Houston is doing this summer." I said, "I don't know." I said, "He's a senior, he's smart, he's probably graduating." The next day, I had flown home, and I walked in Bigelow Hall at the University of Louisville, and who was in there but Wade? I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to be a counselor for Upward Bound." I said, "Me too." And so we were stuck together for 10 weeks in this Upward Bound program. And so at the end of the 10 weeks, there we were. Entrepreneurship was not in my playbook at all. Wade is really the architect of our entry into the business arena. He grew up in Alcoa, Tennessee, and his father worked for Alcoa Aluminum. And at that time, work stoppages, strikes, delays were part of being in that profession. And so he grew up in an environment that really didn't want to do anything that involved working for others. He hadn't learned the tenet that even if you own your own business, you work for others. You work for your customers. You're never really independent. But he always wanted to go into business. And I remember he came home when he was coaching. He came home one day, he said, there's a liquor store that's for sale. He said, we ought to get that. I said, Wade, you know what? I don't see coaching, kids, liquor store. I like to do these things, but that's probably not the venue that we should go into. But the two, the yin and the yang, is really what got us into business. I think our very first business, and it might not have been the first, but we had Concept 3. We were going to be the Krogers of the West End. We got the store, and it opened, and everything that could go wrong just combined to go wrong. Long story short, we learned a lot of things from that adventure, but when we got an opportunity in transportation, it became obvious to me that if we were going to survive as business people, and if the marriage was going to survive, I was going to have to leave the University of Louisville. I was then Associate Director of Financial Aid at the University of Louisville, but I was going to have to put that aside and join or form the family business. It was more survival than any aspiration or dream. This was not something that I grew up wanting to do. I always said we were a powerful trio. Charlie Johnson was Wade's roommate. He could sell ice in Alaska. Wade, people trust him. I'll be the one yapping, and he'll walk in the room and say boo, and the boo becomes, my goodness, Coach said boo. He could read a room, open a door, and brought, I'm not saying credibility, but some degree of credibility. So I would integrate once the door was opened and, work to identify what it is the customer really needed. I think I have a unique ability to put myself in the seat of each of the people around the table. And if you're honest enough with the customer, you can even say, I don't think that we're a good fit. I think it was my naivety or openness, or I don't know. But I would always be honest with them and say, they would want to do this. I said, we can't do this. We can't do this. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying we may not be the right partner for this. But many of them would come back because after going down a path, they'd circle back and say, you know what? You were right. Now, family businesses have its own unique challenges, but they are sometimes different than the challenges of having partnership. You may have a partner who thinks the end game is to build the balance sheet, to flip it, that was not ever the Houston branch's motivation, right? It was to give back to community, whether that giving back was time, talent, or treasure, to see the impact of what you do on people's lives, on individual families, on communities, on being able to host things or sponsor a table. That is success. And part of that goes back to faith. I am accountable. We are blessed. God trusts us. If he didn't, it's Good Friday, but if he didn't, he'll use somebody else. Don't get me wrong. Cash in has to exceed cash out. Money is important, but it's another resource. Entrepreneurship, businesses, and I mean entrepreneurship at every level. It's the lifeblood of the community. It is innovation, information, it's development, it's community. It does all of that. It provides knowledge. And ultimately, it provides the product, the whatever it is. There has to be an appreciation for the gamut, for the diversity of entrepreneurship. It's so natural, I guess. Communities, organizations to look at the big companies. So we need to recruit. We're going to recruit the big companies, but we still have to have a appreciation from the homegrown and help them develop to be the next whatever. Because it is in that environment that the community benefits. In many ways, young people see, oh, he lived on this street. Somehow we've got to appreciate it all and have room. Again, we have to have room for all the segments, because the little guy is eventually going to be the big guy. And it's important for the Commonwealth.